Let's face it, as people who engage with the public regularly, we've all seen this type of interaction.
I have a breathing problem. My doctor would not let me wear masks. So anyone who asks me to wear masks, you guys are violating federal law. You get that? Get that on camera.
We know what she's called, right? A Karen. How do you deal with a Karen or her male counterpart, Chad?
All lives matter. All lives matter.
If you work in local government, you probably get more than your fair share of contentious interactions. We'll start by looking at the history of this dynamic. No surprise, it stems from white privilege. Then we'll look at how to interact with Karens and Chads. Oddly, the techniques are very similar to hostage negotiations.
Well, sir, it's Agent Hubbard, FBI. Now, what I propose is that you let these people go, and I'll take their place.
So who are Karen and Chad? In general, they fall into one of three buckets. Number one, a person who is entitled or demanding beyond the scope of what is appropriate or necessary. Number two, a person who cares more about how something is impacting them than society as a whole. And number three, a person who gets involved in issues and situations that are none of their business. While Karens have become well known in popular culture, we all know that people who are demanding, entitled, nosy complainers come in all varieties. But today we're looking at the classic Karen as a way to discuss dealing with difficult people in general. The emergence of Karen, one could argue, is indicative of white women being oppressed for their gender and privileged by their race, half victim and half accomplice to injustice. In fact, we've been creating archetypes for this type of person since before then, since the antebellum era. The first Karen was known as Miss Ann. Think Scarlett O'Hara, a white woman who is aware of the status her race conveys and complicit in the system that preserves it.
Fiddly-dee. War, war, war. This war talk's spoiling all the fun at every party this spring. I get so bored I could scream.
Fast forward to the 1990s when the idea of Becky was immortalized by Sir Mix-a-Lot. Becky was slang for a white woman who was happily ignorant and unaware of her whiteness, yet complicit with the system that upholds her status. Finally, in the 2010s, the term Karen became shorthand for the entitled white woman who leverages the system that privileges her race to get what she wants. Her complaints, all caught on video, range from being outraged about leash rules in a park to mask mandates in public meetings. The choice of the moniker has been linked to the film Mean Girls, where the character says,
"Oh my God, Karen, you can't just ask people why they're white."
A meme in and of itself. Side note, I'd be remiss if not acknowledging that while we have Chads or Kens or Daves, whatever you call Karen's male counterpart, there is a debate about whether or not the meme is sexist. Why aren't the white privileged men who built and sustained the system called under attack at the same time? It's a fair question, which is why I'm talking about Karens and Chads. So when you encounter a Karen or a Chad, the best approach is to follow the FBI hostage strategy. After all, Karens or Chads, or whatever you call them, are holding you and others hostage with their ignorance. Before starting, you need to adopt a completely counterintuitive mindset, taking winning off the table. This isn't about winning or losing. This is about listening and hearing. That's right, you're not going to try to convince them of anything. You only need to understand them from their own perspective, which means first, shut up and just listen. Typically, we think of negotiations as a give and take, but you need to really care about the other person's desires, fears, concerns, and objectives. Yeah, that's a tough one when you're in the trenches, feeling that you couldn't be farther removed from their point of view. But as you see, without caring, it's impossible to get through the first three steps of this process, which require you to immerse yourself in the other person's mind. Let's look at how you do this with an example. Meet Karen. She sues her local city council after they installed a new stop sign that hides the sun from her window a few minutes a day. The sign was installed after a child on their bicycle was hit by a speeding driver and died. If you can deal with this Karen, you can deal with any Karen. The first step to hostage negotiations and dealing with Karen is active listening. This means listening without judging and making sure the person you're listening to knows that you've heard them. How do you do this? Mirroring. It's not mimicry. Rather, it's tuning into their frequency, tuning into their body language and tone.
The reason I bought this house is because of the beautiful light, and that stop sign blocks the afternoon glow.
For sake, you're worried about the afternoon light when a kid died? So the light is blocked and it disrupts your view. Is that what you're saying?
Number 2, empathy. Really putting yourself in someone's shoes means thinking the way that they do, whether you agree with them or not, without judging them. It means acknowledging that they will find masks uncomfortable or the street light annoying.
Now, cars stop in front of my house. It's a completely different piece of real estate.
So your house is more important than the safety of people in your neighborhood? So you're upset because your neighborhood's changed. Your street and house, they're different now. I can understand how that would be upsetting.
Number 3 of hostage negotiations with Karen is rapport. Once you've established an understanding of the other person's mindset and their motives, you can respond with language that will resonate. This isn't manipulation. Really, step into their world and accept the only way to reach them is through their own view of themselves and their situation. It is a little like self-imposed Stockholm Syndrome, the term used to describe how hostages begin to see and understand and ultimately adopt the rationale of their captors. You are digging into the mindset of your captor, your Karen.
I'm outraged. I'm worried it will impact my property value.
So a child's life is not as important as your property values? I understand. You're concerned about the sign impacting your property values. So is public safety secondary or just as important as property values?
Step number 4, influence. Usually we think of influence as manipulating someone into doing something that they may not want to do. Instead, think of influence as a way to problem solve with someone because you understand their objective and have illustrated a willingness to help them achieve it.
Of course I'm concerned about public safety. I just don't understand why you didn't talk to me first.
Oh, all this over a sign. Okay, you're right. The city should have spoken to you first. I've taken down your information and I hear your concerns. Someone at the city will follow up with you about any alternatives that balance the need for public safety and property values. I appreciate you letting us know your concerns.
Number 5, behavior change. Unfortunately, this last step is where most of us start. We expect to be able to change someone's behavior by pointing out what's wrong with the way they're currently thinking and acting and behaving. Well, good luck with that. It doesn't work, and for good reasons. First, it assumes your truth is the only truth. There are few, if any, truths that we can all accept as absolutes. You're probably bristling at that thought, the last sentence, aren't you? That's my point. It's really hard. When someone's thinking is privileged and thinks of themselves over the greater good, it's hard for any public servant to understand. But once you've started pitting one truth against the other, you've just lost the negotiation and at best escalated into full-on warfare. The fact is that if you've gone through the first 4 steps, you are well equipped as you can be to propose alternatives and solutions that stand a chance of modifying an original behavior, just enough to achieve an acceptable outcome for everyone involved. We all want to believe that we are smart enough, convincing enough, and right enough to win someone over to our side, which is why this simple strategy is so hard. You must suspend your own ego and check your arrogance in order to allow the other person to be heard and to provide yourself with the ability to enter their mind space. It's okay to disagree with privilege. After all, we strive to promote equity as a society. But if the goal is good public policy and decision making, keep the cuss words in your head and think like a hostage negotiator. Because we can't continue to allow Karens, Beckys, Chads, and Daves to hold us hostage as a society any longer.